You're listening to the What is Success Show, a podcast that seeks people from all walks of life that ask the question, what does success mean to you and what inspires you? My name's Albert Sanusa. I'm best known for being the founder and owner of State Transport, a business I built from the ground up, now growing and diversifying into all sectors of the supply chain. Welcome, Tim. Thank you very much for visiting State Transport. It's great to meet the staff. We've given you a quick visit of the site. Any takeaways from what you've seen since arriving here?
Thanks, Albert. It's really fantastic actually to be here at State Transport and actually see the scale of the operations. I know you opened this business in 1989 and the growth that it's had, but I'm really excited about your next stage and expansion to be able to go up the eastern seaboard, because there's nothing I love more than seeing local residents doing well, but what I was really taken by was the hunger, enthusiasm and good spirits amongst the staff who are working together. Though I will say I was more impressed where I saw fresh fruit as a snack versus the alternatives, but everybody has their own way of getting through the day.
Look, that was very kind of you. Thank you. Thanks for saying that. And yes, we are expanding, and the supply chain is under a lot of duress at the moment, and there's a lot going on, not only domestically but right around the world. And there's a few challenges which have been on the news of recent times. Are you able to add any insights into what's happening with the supply chains on an international, global scale, which affects all of us here in Australia?
Yeah, it does. And look, the reality is there's been a significant shift in supply chains already pre-COVID. We just kind of didn't pay attention to it because businesses were starting to hedge risk because they were aware of geopolitical risks, but also climate risk, as well as just simple business continuity risk. And so that was already starting to happen, where we're seeing countries starting to say, do we really want everything to go through China, or do we need to hedge our bets? And if you actually look at the academic research, there's a lot of assessment done about how there was a shift towards regionalisation. And of course, that's come about through things like the access to microchips through Taiwan, etc. So it was a shift already. COVID's brought the future forward and made it significantly faster. And of course, what we now know is that transport and logistics and supply chain risk is something businesses are going to have to factor into their business models, which perhaps they haven't had to do either properly or for a long time. And that's where having transport and logistics options is going to be a really important part of that conversation if they want to have a sustainable business model.
No, you're right. And we've had lots of challenges, but we are finding that we're catching up. The backlog and bottleneck of COVID that's been created is abating.
You're still struggling in some places to get simple things like
we've had the floods in Queensland. They were more on top of COVID as well, but they are alleviating now. But there'll still be struggles for sure.
There's still struggles, but there's even just getting the basics of the equipment you need sometimes to shift, like pallets. There's been a big shortage at the start of the year. It's improving. We were at another business owner the other day where they're still dealing with the realities of the pallet shortage. For them, it's a boon because they're making pallets,
yes.
But it is part of the conversation.
Yes, no, you're right. And we've had lots of discussions with SHEP, and they've added additional manufacturers to help with their pool and growing the pool, and that is alleviating, but it's still been an issue.
Yep.
But if I can just jump to the campaign being run at the moment.
Yes.
There's lots of challenges out there, and any comments, particularly from last night? Any views you'd like to?
By last night, you mean the leaders' debate between the Prime Minister and the Leader of the Opposition. I'll be frank, I didn't like the format. I thought they were allowed to interrupt each other too much, which means that people can't offer substantive responses. And I think that's more than anything what the country's looking for. People know there are big challenges on the horizon. They want substantive answers, but they also want the confidence that the country is going to move forward with confidence. And we need the country to move forward with confidence. And that's why the election's a choice. It's a choice between, frankly, a Liberal-led coalition government, a strong government that's focused on taking the whole of the country forward together, or the risk is a minority parliament with Labor, Greens and of course the so-called independents cobbling together a parliament of chaos. And the reality is, Australia faces immense challenges. Doesn't matter who's in government, it's immense challenges on the horizon. And what we need to do is go into the remainder of this decade united, and we need to go into united because what we do in the next 3 years will not just inform the remainder of the decade, it will shape the remainder of the century and really set up the remainder of the century. And when you look at our national security threats, our economic challenges, if we don't have a united country facing those big external threats, we're going to face big problems as a country.
No, thanks for that. We've also, with Bayside, there's a lot happening with Bayside, and there's a number of initiatives. Are any of the things you'd like to touch on in relation to what's currently...
Yeah, well, anything in the council's responsibility is not my fault.
Yeah.
but no, there are a lot of initiatives because, and this is part of our local election pitch, there's a serious need for a warm water pool for the community, for learn to swim facilities, as well as hydrotherapy. So we secured $5 million of federal funding election commitment for that, making sure we address the issues of gender equity with sporting facilities, whether it's a Trevor Barker or Brighton Beach, we've secured funding for those as well. The redevelopment of or restoration of Elstonwick Park as a nature reserve for 2- and 4-legged friends. We've secured $6 million for that. But there are other challenges like the shifts in sand movements on the beaches. I know this is very important for a lot of local residents. Now that's a state government and council responsibility, but we're looking at those as challenges also with foreshore restoration and securing the coastline, because that's one of the biggest problems we face environmentally locally, is making sure that we don't have too much erosion.
Yeah, no, it's a good point. I live in Bayside and I often visit the beaches, and they have got a little bit rockier of late,
yes.
So it's good that there is an initiative there. Tim, we're also running a series on what is your success as a podcast, and what does success mean to you?
Well, I think success for me means living a life of purpose. And it's not to disrespect people, making lots of money. That's, of course, delivers benefits. But if you're living a life of purpose where you're adding to more than what you're consuming, I think you're living a life that has a sense of meaning and purpose, which underpins your success. But I think it's also just about being able to draw points of reference of progress. So recognising what you've done well, celebrating that success, but then using that as a platform to continue going and contribute to other things. But the reality is we all have it. Success is having a happy life with a family, because the family is the bedrock of society. It's the thing that brings us together and is the most important social welfare unit we have. And if you can provide an environment in whatever shape or form that you have a family that supports and loves you, whatever is thrown at you, you will get through it.
Yeah, look, well said, and it also draws me to just thinking about mental health in the transport industry, which is often a challenge, and it's stresses and also having resilience. And I'm very interested in often how politicians, you're in a very, very stressful job. I really don't know how you guys
There's a reason my hair goes grey every year, yeah.
So what's resilience and mental health? How do you deal with that? You touched on some things there, and I agree, even with our staff here, if we can bring and draw out a sense of purpose for them and give meaning in their job function, and also the ability to be responsible and make change as well, it gives them a greater pleasure in what they do. But you're in a very tough gig as a politician. What's resilience? How do you deal with just the stresses of all of that?
So it's actually quite basic. The truth is I do things like breathing exercises from time to time when you feel a really great degree of stress, and my staff can sometimes attest to the fact that I'm not always in my perfect form, but always working on addressing those challenges. But it's also being mindful that there are things you can control and there are things you can't control, and not getting too stressed about the things you can't control in politics. And that happens quite a lot. So find a place of calm, recognise what you can control and get on with it. But I think more than anything else, half of the stress of the job is alleviated by being able to point to pillars of success where you've got something done. One of the frustrations of being in public life is that a lot of the conversations so significantly transcend you, but you're a critical part of it, that if you can't point and say, I helped make that happen, or I got that outcome, you can sometimes feel a bit lost. But the other thing also is to take responsibility. Everyone who gets elected into Parliament, I would hope, gets elected to take responsibility. And taking responsibility is the basis in which you find meaning. Taking responsibility is the basis in which you find agency. And taking responsibility is the basis in which you find a satisfaction in what it is you're trying to achieve, rather than buck passing it on to others.
Look, thank you very much for coming to see us today, Tim. I appreciate that, and I wish you and your team the very best of luck.
Thanks, Albert. It's great to be with you.